Welcome to Stars Matter, a recruiting podcast from The Athletic. I'm Mitch Light, joined by Ari Wasserman. Ari, how's it going?
I'm doing really well today. How are you, Mitch?
I'm good. It's a little chilly here in Nashville, but it's blue skies, so I always put you in a good mood. I hope the weather's okay in Dallas. How we never asked about the weather. How's the weather in Dallas today? I really want to know.
We never ask about the weather because that's what you say or talk about when you're uncomfortable.
I'm very comfortable around you.
Are you a get into the Uber and then talk about the weather with the random Uber driver to
No, I rarely go anywhere where I require an Uber, so no, I'm fine.
Wow, it rains a lot in Seattle, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm a people person. I like talking to people, but small talk and banter, nothing's more painful than the banter, like a local news when they transition from the sports guy to the anchor. Just the world would be a better place if we didn't have banter like that. So
yes, but I think weather is the number one topic of banter.
Oh yeah, definitely. So
I feel like the weather should only be a discussion point when it's inclement.
Right, because I don't care really. You're inside. Let me guess. Is it 72 degrees in Dallas today?
It's 6. Is it 64 or 73? I don't know.
Right.
It's just there's no tornadoes today. So we're all
as long as it's not extreme, I'm happy for you. Okay, let's banter about college football recruiting. How about that?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, good show. I think today we got some quarterback news. One 5-star is set to make an announcement this week. We're going to take a look at some more data from Manny Navarro's recruiting geography series. Some news and notes from another country, mailbag and trivia. I would say, we're recording this on Wednesday. Most people listen Thursday on Friday. On Friday afternoon, Jadyn Davis, 5-star quarterback from Charlotte, is set to announce his decision, I believe, on ESPN national TV. I think almost everyone expects it'll be the University of Michigan. You wrote a column last week on the significance of a recent Michigan commitment, Jordan Marshall, the 4-star running back from Ohio who committed to Michigan over an offer from Ohio State. But Ari, to me, based on what Michigan has gone through at the quarterback position in recent years, the far more significant commitment, assuming it happens, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, one was a statement of geography. This one is a next step at the quarterback position get. So, it is funny because we talk about how much trouble Michigan's had with elite level players at the quarterback position. And it's
they have a 5-star quarterback right now.
They have a 5-star quarterback who's starting for them at the moment. So I don't know if that's necessarily true.
That's why I hesitated. Sorry for the because I was going to say maybe the most impactful commitment of the Jim Harbaugh era, but then I thought to myself, wait, they've got a 5-star quarterback right now, so we can't.
Yeah, but this one is a little bit different though because this is a kid in the South with offers from everybody, and I don't remember 100%. I actually went and visited JJ McCarthy and wrote about him when he was in high school, but I don't remember what his offers list looked like because he was a Illinois kid who went to a private school, and I don't necessarily think that his recruitment was as big as Jadyn Davis's recruitment is. And the other thing too is in this climate, so much has changed since McCarthy committed to Michigan.
Sure.
Both circumstantially with Michigan's program, but also in the world of recruiting. So for them to be back-to-back Big Ten champions, which by the way is what JJ McCarthy promised when he committed. Ooh. When I went down and wrote about him, he said, because, Ohio State played a little grab ass with him in his high school recruitment. He went down to Ohio State. He was interested in Ohio State, and then they kind of slow played him a little bit, and he felt they were being a little dishonest. And then he went to Michigan with the idea of being a Buckeye killer, and he's done that. He only started one of those games, but, he is the quarterback at Michigan when the rivalry is flipping to the other side. So I'm looking at J.J. McCarthy's, offers list right now just to kind of, do a little bit of memory lane. And he was the number 25 overall player in the 2021 class.
And Davis is 28, by the way.
He did have offers from LSU, Ohio State, Tennessee, and A&M, but I don't see Alabama. I don't see Georgia. And I don't know what the circumstances were when he committed or if they had other guys already in the fold in that class. But this to me is just a huge, huge situation. And the other thing too is the fact that Davis is in Charlotte, and Charlotte is such a important city for Clemson, and Clemson is, Mr. the program of quarterback and I know Clemson signed Cade Klubnik a few years ago, and
They're hot
You know,
after
last
Aaron
year,
Noland. Yeah, Aaron
yeah, and
Noland
they got
appears to be their guy.
Christopher Vazina last year. So I don't know if it's just lined up the right way, but if you go look at Jadyn Davis's offer list, I see Alabama, I see Clemson, I see Georgia, I see LSU, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Oregon, Texas,
Arizona, are they on
Oklahoma.
there?
I mean, Arizona is not on there.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure he has an offer, but probably not worth noting. But just the time of it, because we're talking so much about NIL and how Michigan isn't a participant in inducements. We're talking about, taking the next step forward in the recruiting realm once you beat Ohio State and win the Big Ten. And last year's class, frankly, didn't do it. So if they're able to go in after a prolonged recruitment, I mean, Michigan's been after this kid for a year now, and land him despite the fact that he's also considering some other big-time schools. What are those other finalists? North Carolina, Tennessee, I think Penn State's in there. But, it's not – I think this would be a more impactful commitment than McCarthy's was.
Yeah, and, I don't know what his ties to North Carolina are. Obviously, he's an in-state kid. I don't know his family situation. But this is also coming. I don't think we can discount when there's a guy, Drake May, who is a former 5-star in-state quarterback who's had tremendous success with the North Carolina program and is a third-year sophomore this year and could be headed to the draft. So there could be direct playing time at North Carolina too. So I don't want to discount the Tar Heels either.
Yeah. And listen, we're in March, and I've been covering this stuff a long time to know that crazy stuff happens when a player commits in March, and maybe he'll sign with Michigan, maybe he won't, but there's no question that there is some momentum brewing in this recruiting class that kind of just hasn't existed in the past. They'll be the second top 100 player out of the 10 commitments. And if you go look at Michigan State breakdown, they've got Ohio, 4 kids out of Ohio, 1 out of Connecticut, 1 out of Michigan, 1 out of Pennsylvania, 1 out of Tennessee, 1 out of Washington, and maybe now 1 out of North Carolina. So, they're in Ohio, but also spread out too. Like, I think that's the exact way you want to see their classes built. So, I've been harsh or, critical of Michigan in the past, but I think that things are starting to really go in the direction that we thought it would a year ago. And that's a good sign for them.
Yeah, we've speculated and people have speculated. I'm sure Michigan fans probably, know more about this than we do, but if some of the reluctance on Jadyn Davis maybe to commit earlier, they have had some upheaval offensive coordinator position there. So probably looking for some stability there. We don't know if that's factored in at all, but all signs are definitely
getting to know the new offensive coordinator too.
Yes,
Sharon Moore, and he's supposedly a star at his position, and going in here and closing this would be a huge, nice little feather in his cap as he gets going there. And the Michigan program to me has always been a program that could be a top 7, top 5 type program. I've always thought they had all the resources, the education, the tradition,
great
the money.
town.
Ann Arbor, I think, is the best Big Ten town.
Yep.
I know Madison gets a lot of love, but I love Ann Arbor. Detroit's an underrated city. I think that, it's all in place for them to be a national championship contender. And I've said that for the last 5, 6, 7 years as I was being critical of them. And like, now that things are headed in the right direction, isn't it crazy how quickly the tune changes?
Yeah, you're like a coach who's only rough on the player because you recognize his potential.
And I almost felt like I was the only one who thought it. And it kind of annoyed me because, when you look at all the things that are factored into, big time college football programs, I don't know that there's anything that Michigan doesn't have. The number one knock on them has always been that they are more on the Notre Dame spectrum of academics first and not buying into becoming a football factory. But I've always thought that you can do both. I mean, you can be a good school that puts a premium on athletics and the studies and majors, but also be very good at football too, because, the notion that really good football players in high school are stupid is just downright wrong and dumb. I think that there's something to be built there, and it's happening right now. So really excited to see what Michigan can build, and if this is a 2-year blip or something that, might turn the rivalry for the next decade, because, we've seen in the history of this rivalry that it's gone back and forth.
Yep. The most notable quarterback in the class is Dylan Raiola. Phoenix has been making the visits and was at Georgia, I believe, last weekend. there's been a lot in his recruitment where his most recent visit seems to be kind of the favorite people talk about. But I think by all accounts had maybe no, he was at Georgia 2 weeks and 2 weekends
ago,
and then was at Nebraska this last weekend. So hearing a lot of Georgia buzz now, but we don't know. You wrote last week and talked on the podcast that how we argued about how great it would be if he went to Nebraska. Who knows at this point? My guess would be Georgia. You can't go wrong at the University of Georgia.
That's your guess?
Yes.
I just think it's an interesting pattern that every time he visits somewhere like that, the guess is the place he just left.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's just young teenager excitement and obviously a easy place to connect the dots to, but Georgia has had multiple spring visits, as has Nebraska. It's fun. It's fun to follow,
Yeah.
and try to.
I don't think anything's imminent. I think maybe some official visits, and then maybe announce in June, which seems to be the popular choice now, which, wasn't always the case. It was more maybe anytime or during the fall. Some notable commitments. We've talked about these guys last week or 2 weeks ago, right on the heels of Ben Roebuck, a 3-star offensive tackle from St. Edwards in Cleveland, committing to Michigan, who evidently did not have an Ohio State offer. Well, his teammates, Devontae and Deontay Armstrong, from St. Edwards. By the way, I said it last week. I just imagine being an undersized defensive lineman going up against that offensive line in high school. Three Big Ten, upper level Big Ten commits. Devontae is an offensive guard ranked 353. Deontay Armstrong is offensive tackle 313. They've climbed up the rankings. I think when Cameron Teague Robinson, our Ohio State writer, first wrote about them, I think one was a 3-star, one was a 4-star, but now they're both 4 stars. Big
twins, Basil.
Yeah,
twins.
Big in-state gets. At position, I wouldn't say positions of need. Bill Landis wrote about it. Cam's written about it. You've talked about it. That's maybe the one area where Ohio State has not recruited at the same level as other positions. So I wouldn't say these are nationally. Yeah. So these are in-state guys, not program-changing commitments by any stretch at Ohio State, but two important gets that they want. They obviously wanted these guys and they got them.
Yeah. And both of them coming in on the offensive line. It's like, it's so hard to tell sometimes too. It's like, because Ohio State has had a lot of 3-star, 4-star offensive linemen from the Cleveland area come into the program and turn out to be first-round draft picks. So, but also not commitments that necessarily move the needle. Like, those are two guys that might be foundational pieces as in-state prospects, but isn't something that's going to help Ohio State get to where it wants to go in terms of the mathematical number or the mathematical necessity to sign a top 5 class. So, I don't want to sit here and celebrate Ohio State like they just did something big. They did the bare minimum of what they're supposed to do, which is get middle tier national prospects from their state to commit. And, I think it's probably a good sign for them to do it less than a week or about a week after Michigan did what they did in Ohio. But there's a lot of fish that the Buckeyes are pursuing right now that are big. What is it, like a marlin? They're searching some marlins right now. That was, I think that should be and has been a layup for Ohio State in the past 10 years. And, maybe Michigan will make it harder for that to be a layup in the future, but they did what they had to do, and good on Ryan Day and his staff for getting that done.
Yeah, I always find it fascinating. Ohio State's a perfect example. LSU could be an example. We talked about Alabama with its in-state crop last year. The elite programs, when do they pull the trigger or not pull the trigger on the very good prospects, but non-top 100, non-top 200 players? And if they slow play them, do they risk alienating them and losing them? Obviously these are guys that they wanted. They wouldn't have offered them this early, although they didn't offer till January, which is kind of late in the process. So just a kind of one of those storylines that's just, as a staff, that's why they get paid the money. They got to make the evaluations and figure out whether or not these guys are good enough to play there and good enough to be difference makers. Oklahoma went into your old stomping grounds, and got a 4-star cornerback, Jeremiah Newcomb from Queen Creek, Arizona, another elite in Arizona prospect. Not playing.
Have you been to Phoenix before?
Excuse me?
Oh, you have. We went to Phoenix together.
Yes, we were together.
Queen Creek used to be way out there when I was a kid.
I was going to ask you. I never heard of it. So is it?
Yeah. It was like a newer development when
I
was a kid, and now it's kind of like the suburbs to the suburb almost.
Yeah.
And
Sprawl.
Arizona is just massive.
Yep.
Like if you drove from my house to where I grew up to Queen Creek, I think it would take an hour and 15 minutes the entire time while being in Phoenix.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, again, that's no shot against Kenny Dillingham. He's only been on the job for a few months, but that's another in-state recruit that's not going to Arizona or Arizona State. This morning, Thursday morning, we'll have Manny Navarro's Pac-12 recruiting and geography. That's kind of a theme there about, which schools are and are not recruiting in Arizona. Ole Miss, a busy week. Jeffrey Rush, a 4-star defensive lineman from Pascagoula, Mississippi, number 136, number 4 in the state. Again, unranked junior college linebacker Raymond Collins from Jones College, and 3-star running back Chris Davis from Picayune, Mississippi. So we talked a couple of weeks ago, this is shaping up to be a banner year in the state of Mississippi, sort of like last year was for Alabama. Ole Miss has 6 commits, 5 in-state, which is a very high ratio for them. Their most highly ranked in-state recruit is Rush, the 4-star defensive lineman from number 4 in the state, and their quarterback, their one out-of-state prospect is a 4-star quarterback from Arizona. And then Auburn gets a running back, Jamarian Burnett from Andalusia, Alabama, number 158 overall. Trivia question: what several-time, however you want to say it, NBA champion is from Andalusia, Alabama?
Couldn't tell you. In a million years.
Really? A million years?
Kerry Kittle.
No, I don't think he ever won an NBA title. I don't think he's from New Orleans, by the way.
He was on your favorite team, so I just thought I'd say his name.
Robert Horry. Do you remember Robert Horry?
No. Yeah, he has like 6 rings, doesn't he?
Yeah, all these different. Yeah. Little note on quarterbacks. 25 blue chip quarterbacks in the 247 composite. How many do you think are committed? Don't spend too much time on it. 25.
11.
25 blue chippers. 14 have committed. Some other news and notes from just looking at the rankings. 3 teams have double-digit commits. Georgia and LSU have 11. The third team with double-digit commits just shocked me. I don't know why. I just did not expect to see them there.
Shocked you? I know who it is.
Who is it?
Is it Pitt?
Yes. Were you looking at it lately?
I just was looking at the list the other day.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. So Pitt, it's funny because they're in the top 10.
Pitt's like number 6 in the rankings or something right now.
Yeah,
so I was like, why is that? And it's like, they've got 11 commits.
Right.
10 commits.
They've got 1 4-star, 8 3-stars, and 1 unranked guy. Their average player rating of 86.45. And keep in mind they're in the top 10 that we just said. Last year's average player rating was 86.66, which was higher, and they finished with the 51st ranked class. So this is just a lesson in.
They had a small class last year, though, didn't they?
True. Yeah. So this is just.
You know who else is in the top 10 right now, pal?
Wake Forest.
Yes.
Deeks.
Your second team.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody listening to this knows, but Mitch's son goes to Wake Forest. So
I talk about it enough. Yeah.
Okay.
So, the baseball team's ranked number 2 in the country.
So, imagine having a number 10 overall class nationally without a single player rated in the top 700.
That's why the rankings are what they are this time of year. And for more, how's about this for Tees? For more on Wake Forest quarterback recruiting, go look at Grace Rayner's story from a few weeks ago on what their evaluation of quarterbacks. They always seem to have good quarterbacks there. All right. Minnesota got a commitment from. I found this
Jeremy Hecklinski.
Yeah, that's Notre Dame's. I mean, that's Wake Forest's.
Yes. Did Grace write about him?
Yes. I think she interviewed him too. Thanks for reading the story.
There's a lot of stories on The Athletic.
You think you'd read
every single all of them. I'm sorry I don't read every single story that goes on the internet.
Okay, you should read the recruiting stories.
I know.
Minnesota got a commitment from wide receiver Dallas Sims, who plays at Clearwater Academy International. Nothing notable there, except the dude's from Winnipeg. I don't remember any college football player being from Winnipeg. There's from Toronto. Or
he's just waiting for next year's hockey tryouts.
Yeah, so he's going
364 days to get ready for next year's hockey tryouts.
I think Minnesota's number 1 in hockey too. So maybe he's a 2-sport athlete. 4 Power 5 teams do not have a commitment yet. Would you be concerned if you were a fan of a team that didn't have a commitment? I would not yet, because there's a lot with just one.
I don't know if I would like be pulling the fire alarm, but
okay, two of them are really hurting with momentum. One of them has a ton of momentum, and one of them is just kind of there. So the 4 teams that don't have a commitment: Indiana, not much momentum; Virginia, like negative momentum; TCU, a lot of momentum, played for a national championship; and Washington State. Miami has 1 commitment, an unranked kicker. That's kind of...
You know what I love about the recruiting rankings? When you don't have a commitment, you're just not ranked. You're not even mentioned.
That's how I found. Yeah, I did searches Indiana and it just didn't pop up. You just don't exist.
They just don't have a commitment. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Plenty of time to fill classes out, but like sometimes too, it's just like I've seen teams get out to a really fast start and then not do very well. And I've seen teams get out to a really fast start and people get falsely excited. And then when everyone else's classes fill out, it's just a forgettable class. But there's one thing I wanted to say.
Say it.
Because I looked this up for the mailbag that I ran on Tuesday. But Florida has 4 players committed, I think. 4 or 5. And I believe 3 of them are in the top 50 nationally. So that's a really good start for them. So I am on high alert for dysfunctional Florida from last year and whether or not they can right the ship this year. But so far, they're on a great track. And one of them's a 5-star quarterback from Texas. So like that to me is
locked in. Like even if they struggle on the field this year, like I don't think if you're DJ Lagway, you're going to be concerned about like it's Graham Mertz or Jack Mill or whoever wins the job. I assume it's going to be Mertz. This is probably his last year of eligibility. I don't know. It gets confusing with the COVID year, but like there's a pathway to playing time at Florida, no matter what happens on the field this year.
Yes.
All right, we're playing the geography game again, like we did last week with the Big 12 and Big 10. Okay. I'm going to give you the school. And you give me your guess for the percentage of in-state recruits signed over the last 6 cycles. Okay?
Yep, let's do it. So which one are we going to do first? You want to do
Big 12.
Did we do the Big 10 last week?
No, we did the ACC.
Okay, let's do it.
So the Big 12 ran Monday, I believe, and the Big 10 ran yesterday. I think the Big 12 ran on Friday, but they'll all be published very soon.
Okay, Big 12.
Baylor.
So not the new Big 12?
Yes, I'm giving you all 14 teams.
Okay. Baylor, I would say 70%.
73.
Look at that. Let's go.
Their secondary, their most recruits from out of state is Louisiana with 6 over the last 6 years.
Okay.
BYU.
That is really hard because there's the Mormon in-state connection, but they're also a very national brand, right?
Mm-hmm.
50%.
46.
Boom!
California is their top out of state at 26. Cincinnati. Oh, this is your old stomping ground. You're an Ohio man.
44%.
48.
Okay, let's go.
Yes. Florida and Illinois are the top out of state with 13. Houston.
66%.
Did you like open up my Google Doc or something? It's 66%, literally. This is like your best run of anything in your life ever.
Well, these are kind of easy. You could I'm not saying that I'm like you could if you follow this stuff every day like we do, it's like you can kind of get an idea of
but 66 getting it exactly.
Well, 66% is just like 2/3, so that's why.
Okay.
I mean, I got lucky. It's not that I'm
Iowa State.
15%.
20%. I think you've been within 6 on every one. Where do you think their number 1 state is for players?
Iowa State's got to be Texas.
Florida, 19.
Interesting. Okay.
Kansas. Do Kansas and Kansas State together? Not add their numbers, like just give me your guess for both of them.
Kansas State, I would say 15, 20%.
29. What about Kansas?
Kansas is that was my Kansas guess, 15.
Oh, Kansas was 11.
Oh, well, I would have gone way lower than 29 on Kansas State. So,
Okay. Yeah.
So Kansas State just gets all the good players there?
Yeah, they've done better. And both of their number one states are, not surprisingly, Texas.
Okay.
Here's an interesting one. Oklahoma.
10%.
15.
Okay.
And Texas.
All Texas, right? Yeah.
Oklahoma State.
25%.
30. In Texas, they have 52 players. That might be the most by any out-of-state school in this whole. I'll have to check.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Not 52%, 52 players over 6 years.
No, I know. Just like think about how massive the state is.
Yeah. TCU.
70%.
60. Louisiana is next for them.
Okay.
Texas.
60%.
67.
Okay.
California.
Wow, that's a lot for
Yeah.
a program that recruits at that level.
Yeah. California's next for them. Texas Tech, which might be the
84%.
78.
Is there anybody in the 80s?
No, I think Texas Tech's the highest.
Okay.
National.
Of all Power 5?
Yes, I can
Okay.
double check in a second. UCF.
60.
56th in Georgia. WVU, West Virginia.
Literally nobody. 1%.
Might be the lowest. 6%. Now just think,
1% would have been funny.
like West Virginia's got a good program historically. They don't suck by any stretch. They've had some good teams.
There's just nobody there.
But just think, like, you're going against Texas Tech, which gets 78% of its players in its own state versus 6%. So now, I mean,
Well, like, what's the biggest city in West Virginia? Charleston?
Charleston or Wheeling, probably Charleston. But also, we're talking about actual physical distances. Like Texas Tech is very remote. Like West Virginia is probably a lot closer to Columbus, Ohio than Lubbock is
Tech
to Dallas.
is from Dallas.
Yeah,
yeah, you're
so
right. Yeah,
there are population bases, but you just
I didn't know that Wheeling was a big city. I just thought it was a weird border town with a casino that I used to drive at in the middle.
Well,
of
I
the
don't
night
think
on
there's
weekdays.
any big city. Wheeling, West Virginia population is it's only 26,000. My bad.
What's Charleston's population?
West Virginia population. I knew someone from school from West. Wow, that is a small state. 48,000.
Yeah, there's nobody there.
Yeah. I used to drive through Huntington on the way home from school sometimes.
I think Huntington might be bigger than Charleston. Look that one up.
Okay. Huntington, West Virginia population. This is good stuff. 46,000.
So you could fit all the populations from every major city in West Virginia into the big house.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
All right, let's go. We'll take a run through the Big Ten. Your old stomping grounds. Illinois.
50%.
29. It's your first big
Whoa,
swing and
really?
miss. Yeah. Indiana.
That's embarrassing. Indiana has got to be 20%.
Exactly.
Boom.
Iowa.
If you've noticed, I've only done round numbers. So
yeah. Well, it's 66%. I guess that's 2/3.
Iowa is, I'd say, 24%.
27. Maryland.
66.
What? 33. Maryland's not that big.
They really.
When you scratch your beard, by the way, I can hear it. Scratching your beard. Michigan.
Michigan's got to be 20%.
17.
Nailed it.
Michigan State.
30%.
27.
I'm actually in the zone right now. Big Ten
Minnesota.
East, I'm in the zone. Minnesota, 15%.
19. Nebraska.
10%.
17. Northwestern.
I overshot Illinois, so I'm going to undershoot Northwestern. 25%.
22. Private schools are usually low in state numbers. Ohio State.
25%.
28. Penn State.
Penn State's going to be difficult. I'd say 24%.
26.
Dude, I'm killing the Big Ten East.
And just so people know, Ari doesn't even have access. Well, actually, you do have access to the spreadsheet, but you wouldn't know how to open it or read it. So
I don't know. I don't do spreadsheets.
Yeah. Purdue.
27%.
20. Rutgers.
This has got to be high, 55%.
44. And Wisconsin.
24%.
Exactly. This is impressive, young Ari. I'm happy for you.
Yeah, this is my field.
All right, we got some good mailbag questions. Some from your written mailbag and some just I went in and grabbed. You addressed this one in the this week's mailbag. What you identified one school, even though Dylan F asked which schools do you think have severely underachieved in recruiting for the last decade or so? Are there teams with new coaches this year that could really maximize their potential?
That was an obvious answer. Like, you probably, if you would have asked that question before I wrote it, you probably would have said,
right,
known who I was going to write about, right?
Right. It's Arizona State.
And obviously I'm high on the hire they made. So I don't know. Like, the thing with Arizona State that's always been so difficult is that people refer to it as a sleeping giant. And maybe we should just walk that back a little bit and just shouldn't they just be a competent, pretty good team first? And then we'll go to sleeping giant. I think Kenny Dillingham will make them a competent, pretty good 8-4 team with years where they shoot up to 10 or 11 wins, once every 5 or 6 years, maybe. I think that's a good aiming point. But the fact that they've recruited on average the last 10 years around 40th in the country overall is just, there's no rhyme or reason for it. And I don't need to list out all the things that Arizona State has going for it. People know. But that one really jumped out to me. Is there a school that would have jumped out to you if it was your question? Because you actually have the raw data in front of you, but just gut feeling wise, who do you think has done worse than they should?
Let me call up some teams here. But the one thing about Arizona, and we kind of just addressed it with West Virginia, even though it's an isolated location, it's close to other population bases. And I know you say Arizona, Phoenix is a drive from LA, but it's not that close. I think the Arizona State should be doing better in Phoenix. Because
flying into LAX from Phoenix takes just as long sometimes.
It's still a flight. It still costs money. I know what you're saying. I just think I think there's no reason they should get their ass kicked in state like they do.
Yeah, no, there's no question about it. And I think that's the reason for that is that everybody from Arizona isn't from Arizona.
Yeah, that's
maybe that'll change. Maybe that'll change now that I'm a generation removed. There's a lot of people being born there now that might grow up there, but Arizona, none of my friends are from there. Their parents aren't from there. So everybody has their own allegiances, which is why there's so many Big Ten, allegiances and SEC allegiances in the state of Arizona and in Phoenix in particular. Yeah. But even if they don't do well in Phoenix, proximity alone, if they were a competent program, they would do much better there, but they're not even if you go look right now, they're getting smoked right now. If Dillingham does what he's supposed to do, it's still probably going to take them 2 or 3 years to get off the schneid there. Because you still have players that weren't recruited by previous staffs, and Arizona State has to win something, do something that gives them a pulse. And getting Jadyn Raiola at the end of last cycle was great, but that's a Northern California prospect. So, to me, I would focus a ton on Arizona and I would focus a ton on Southern California because there's a ton of players there that can make plays for you.
What about focusing?
There's no reason why they should be one of the worst teams in the sport, is what I'm saying.
What about focusing on the upper Midwest and the East Coast, getting kids out there for visits?
Yeah, you'd have to dedicate yourself to that for sure. And I've always thought, go to Chicago in the middle of the winter,
right,
and get them to come visit in December in Phoenix, which is, when all the resorts there are $1,200 a night. That would be a nice thing to do. It's just a matter of whether or not you think you could get prospects to commit to go there. And maybe you could, but I don't think that Arizona State will ever be successful unless it's successful in California and Arizona first.
Yeah.
So that has to be paramount. And then I think if you wanted to cherry pick and add a few pieces to your class from the Midwest or places where it's really snowy, then you could do that with a select few. I don't know that I would go into that job with the sole focus being, you want to talk about flight.
Yeah.
Sole focus being somebody, and it's Arizona is culturally much different than the Midwest. So like there's a lot to overcome if you want to get somebody other than, wow, it's not snowing here right now. You know?
Yeah. All right, I'll give you two. One of them's obvious. We spend a lot of time talking about the school. So like UCLA, I don't care. There's no excuse for them to be recruiting in the 30s every year. You probably disagree with me on this one, but I go Virginia Tech. Last four classes, 38, 36, 44, 76. They were a consistent top 25-ish class for about a 10, 15-year period. But I just think Virginia is a very good state for talent. Virginia, especially lately, has been a non-factor in recruiting. I've been to that campus. I went for the first time this last summer, 2 summers ago. Great small town in the middle of nowhere, but a great college town, great fans. I think Virginia Tech should be recruiting better. Close to Atlanta, close to North Carolina. Do you agree or disagree with that one?
I agree with that one. Virginia Tech has just slipped. It has slipped and slipped and slipped, and I wonder if it'll ever come back.
And at a time when, again, I don't think Virginia was ever a huge threat to it recruiting, but when Virginia is a non-factor, you should be feasting in state. And Penn State owned the state this past year. So
we're the best players in Broad Tech history, like Michael Vick, right? Who else?
The best? Bruce Smith,
Angelo Hall,
yeah,
Bruce Smith. But where are those guys from? Because I know that Michael Vick is from Virginia. It's from the DMV. I don't know where. Wasn't he from?
I don't know why I don't know that. I'm looking up right now.
He's from Virginia. I just don't remember what town he's from.
Newport News. So he's from the that's their like Roanoke and not Roanoke, excuse me, like the Virginia Beach area, which is a very, a really good place for talent. I think that's kind of Virginia Tech owned that area for years.
Yeah, I wrote a story about this. I'm going back, published September 4th, 2014. The headline in the Cleveland Plain Dealer was, "What happened to Virginia Tech? Hokies not what they once were because powers like Ohio State have invaded their turf." That was on the Ohio State beat.
Yeah.
And it was
By the way, Bruce Smith is from Norfolk. So that's the same area.
Yeah. Michael Vick was the lead. And it's just not getting the players in state anymore. And it's called the 757.
Yeah.
The Tidewater area. And it's just like, I don't know, who the best players who have come out of there in the last few classes are, but Virginia Tech is a non-factor in its own state.
Yeah. All right, this is from Peter C. What's more likely to happen in the next 5 years? Ohio State becoming an annual disappointment like Texas, or Texas being viewed as a top 3 program like Ohio State has been?
Has Ohio State already been an annual disappointment?
They were one kick away from playing for the national title this year.
I wonder if Ohio State fans felt like last year was successful because of what you just said.
If they made the kick, it would have been successful, but they didn't.
They did not. Yeah. And if I got Margot Robbie's telephone number, I could call her for a date.
She wouldn't pick up.
I missed the kick. I don't know. They've lost to Michigan 2 years in a row.
You know what, though?
They haven't won a national championship in a decade.
That's like a 72-yard field goal into the wind while it's raining. You calling Margot Robbie?
I would probably still miss the ball. No, but you know what I mean? Like, it's like Ohio State's been really good.
Yeah, I know.
And your idea to write the column about being an Ohio State fan's existence is misery.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the case because everybody else would kill to be an Ohio State fan when it comes to what they've accomplished. But if you ask the fans if they are fulfilled with the accomplishments of the program, they would say no, I think. If you replayed the last 2 years on repeat for 10, that would be a person's worst nightmare if they go to Ohio Stadium on Saturday. So I think what he's saying is what's more likely for Ohio State to go 6-6 for the next 10 years in a row, or Texas win a national championship multiple times in the next decade. I think it's more likely that Texas wins at a high level, because I just don't think it's possible with the schedule that Ohio State plays for them to lose as many games as Texas has lost during that time.
Agreed. This is kind of an interesting question. I think every case is different. From Warren B. We know a coach on the hot seat can curse recruiting, but how does an AD on the hot seat like Scott Strickland at UF affect recruits? I'd say big picture, not really. But if you're an educated like a family that really understands college athletics and recruiting, you're probably, all things being equal, going to look for a school with stable leadership. Now, I don't know how many families think that way. I would look at that, but it wouldn't be a huge...
I will say this, though. I don't think I've ever done a recruiting interview with a prospect where the athletic director has been discussed.
They've never said, "Oh, I met with the athletic director" or anything like that on my visit?
But I mean, like, of course I met with, but it's never been, well, this school has this athletic director. It's not a factor.
Yeah.
But there is, it's interesting because the athletic director is a huge factor in whether or not coaches want to go to a school.
Right. It's all about leadership.
So like when it comes to how it impacts recruiting, it might not impact it at like a micro level, but it certainly impacts it at a macro level. Because if the athletic director is the one that's getting the coaches to come, then the coaches' quality and how good of a recruiter they are is impacted by that. So if I were a Florida fan, I would certainly want my my athletic director to be not only stable, but good.
Yeah. All right. This question I loved. It's Travis prefaces it by saying it would never happen. And I don't know if you read this one, but it's a long question. I will basically condense it down to what is the potential if you combined Ole Miss and Mississippi State and you named it the Grisham, after John Grisham, the Grisham University Fighting Catfish. Could they win a national championship? I don't know if the numbers are still for years, though. The state of Mississippi produced more NFL players per capita than any other state. That's just per capita. We've talked about the in-state talent this year. In years past, like 10, 15, 20 years ago, when Ole Miss and Mississippi State weren't quite as prominent as they are now, and Southern Miss was maybe a little bit more prominent, you had 3 Division I schools fighting for minimal talent in that state. So I guess that's the question, Ari. What would you think of the University of Mississippi as one state school like LSU, like Ohio State?
Well, I don't think I look at the Mississippi schools and go, you know what their problem is? The other Mississippi school. So I don't know.
I think it's a factor.
I'm not saying that it's not a factor, but I don't think it's the reason they're not winning national titles. And also, too, if there's a good player in Mississippi, I mean, didn't they have a 5-star prospect in 2022 named Branson Robinson who went to Georgia? I mean, they had multiple.
They got Centurion Perkins
players
this year, went to Ole Miss.
Okay,
so,
but like
maybe
even when they have a
5-star
prospect, they end up going to another powerhouse SEC school. So, like, I mean, personally, I think that the catfish thing is awesome. But like, I'm going back through the recruiting rankings right now. 2022 and 2021, the top player in the state of Mississippi left for LSU and Georgia. In 2020, the number 1 player in the state went to A&M. Like, it's not like they're getting the number 1 player in the state ever.
But okay, let's frame it this way. If it's one university, it's more powerful, it's better, they might recruit better. Like LSU, like when Mississippi State is going and Ole Miss are both playing well, they get 50, 60,000 people. I'm not saying you double that, but let's say you have one school in the state and they're getting 80,000 people a game. It's a bigger university. They've got the more.
Well, let me ask you this:
consolidated. Is
the question about whether or not this fictional school could be good, or is the question about the geography and the number of players in the state?
Well, the question is,
you're basically asking me if they weren't competing against each other and there was a major powerhouse in the middle of Oxford, or let's just say Jackson, would they be the first, or they be a team that competes at LSU's level? And if you go look at the population of Mississippi and the number of top 100 players that typically has, this year is not typical.
It's an aberration.
So I don't think that it still would have enough players, even if it owned its own state, to win a national championship, considering what classes Alabama and Georgia have been signing the last few years.
So yeah, the question was, could they win a national championship?
I don't think so.
Okay, what state where this consolidation be the biggest deal? Because let's look at state. Well, no, Texas is too big. Like
Florida.
What states have multiple state universities that are relatively comparable? Arizona, Michigan, Florida. Florida's too big. Let's get Florida out of there. Michigan, Arizona. I wouldn't say Washington because Washington's so much bigger.
I mean, the one that jumps out to me would be Michigan and Michigan State because they're both in the same division and they're 20. What are they, an hour away from each other? 45 minutes?
About maybe a little bit further, but
that one kind of jumps out to me. But again, the question is not about the programs; it's about the state talent pool,
Right.
And Michigan, I think, is probably pretty similarly situated to Ohio when it comes to total number of players. I don't know. Like if Michigan State stopped existing and it was just Michigan, then it's possible that Michigan would have the same recruiting advantage that Ohio has had, or Ohio State's had in Ohio, which is a neighboring state for the last 30 years. But again, I don't know if Michigan State has recruited at a high enough level historically to be the reason Michigan wasn't as good as Ohio State. And Michigan has always relied on Ohio. So I'm trying to think, like, Mississippi is probably a pretty good example. Like Arkansas is only
Arkansas has fewer players than Mississippi.
I'm trying to think of like big states like North Carolina, maybe.
Yeah.
If you got rid of NC State and Wake Forest, maybe.
I would just go private. I would just go public, looking at public schools.
South
Carolina? How about South Carolina?
Public or private? I'm not. This isn't the.
Well, we're just taking comparable schools that recruit.
I'm thinking Power 5 schools.
Okay. What about South Carolina? Get rid of Clemson. Get rid of South Carolina.
I mean, Clemson's already won national championship.
I know. So how much better could they be?
Probably a little bit better. I don't know if it'd be that much better. It's not like South Carolina's been much of a thorn in their side until recently.
Right.
Like I think find a state that has two, and neither of them have won a national championship in the last 20 years.
Arizona State.
Michigan, Arizona State, Mississippi. I think that might be it.
So what state?
Oregon State.
We have different perspectives because we're different ages and kind of our formative years of watching college football were different eras. But to you, which state would you say the two main state universities are the most similar? Mine would be Arizona State. Like as far as from my outside perception of whether or not those programs could be good.
Yeah, it's like from a competitive standpoint, I would say Michigan and Michigan State, but Michigan and Michigan State are much different universities.
Right. In the historically, Michigan's been so much better.
I think that's probably the right answer. Because Washington and Washington State aren't very similar. I'm looking at the USA map because I'm not very good at envisioning geography with.
You can't just visualize the. I can visualize all 50 states.
I don't know, like Pennsylvania, like Penn State and Pitt. Would that be one? Indiana, Purdue and Indiana.
Purdue's got a better history, I believe.
Missouri, Mizzou is the only state program in Missouri, right? I don't know. Oklahoma.
Yeah,
Get rid of Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma's historically so much better.
Alabama, Auburn, and Alabama doesn't matter. Alabama's king.
Yeah, they've always.
I really think that like the only answers really are
Arizona,
South Carolina, Arizona, Mississippi, Arizona, I said already, and Oregon and Washington. Michigan.
Kentucky's interesting. Kentucky and Louisville. Louisville's more of a city school. Like the fan base isn't as got a nice fan base, but it's not as spread out throughout the state.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a fun question.
Yeah. Always like geography questions. All right, ready for a little trivia? You don't look like you're ready for trivia. You look like you're.
I'm ready for trivia.
Okay. Over the last 6 recruiting cycles,
oh boy,
rank the top 10 states in the order as for producing SEC talent.
SEC talent?
Yes. Which states, 1 through 10, have produced the most SEC signees over the last 6 cycles?
Number 1, Florida.
Incorrect.
Number 1, Texas.
Wrong.
What state? So you added up only teams from the SEC?
It's in Manny's spreadsheet he did. All this data is available. Which states produced the most SEC signees over the last
Georgia.
Yes. Georgia's number 1.
Okay.
Who do you think's number 2?
Florida.
Yes. Who do you think's number 3?
Texas.
Yes. 4.
How many more do I have to go?
Wait. Georgia has had 305 players over the last 6 years go to SEC schools. Florida 274, Texas 235. Okay, who's 4th?
How many am I going down?
10. Just
this is a really hard question, Mitch.
Okay. While you're thinking, I'm going to pivot to a different question.
No, I don't. It's just
Okay.
Alabama
Yes.
would be 4th, right?
Yes. Yes.
Would 5th be Louisiana?
No, Louisiana's 6th because I think
Okay.
Louisiana sends a decent amount of kids to the Big 12. Like Baylor's recruited there.
Yeah.
Texas.
Is South Carolina 5th?
Nope. South Carolina's 8th.
Is California 5th?
Nope. We've just been talking about it.
Kentucky?
Nope. Kentucky's not in the
Mississippi?
top 10. Mississippi's 5th at 157.
Wow. Well, that kind of changes my perspective on the previous question.
Yes. Fighting catfish. Getting it done.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. No, so you
6th is Louisiana.
Yeah, you have 8 is South Carolina. Who's 7?
Tennessee.
Yes.
Okay.
9.
8 is South Carolina.
Yeah.
9, I would say North Carolina.
Nope.
9.
They're both in the SEC footprint.
Who have I said that? What state have I left out of the Missouri?
Yes.
Okay. And then is 10 Arkansas?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Which state not in the SEC footprint has produced the most SEC players over the last 6 cycles?
California.
Nope. You just mentioned them.
North Carolina.
Yes. North Carolina with 37.
Okay.
I can do similar questions like this in future weeks because we got all the data now.
That's cool. That was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of geography on the
Yeah, I know. I'm over here looking at a U.S. map. You know those colorful ones that they hang in high school classrums?
Yes, I'm aware of this.
Looking at one on Amazon. That's the map I used.
Okay. Good. So, all right, you got little travels coming up, don't you, Ari?
Yeah, I'm going to Oklahoma in back-to-back weeks, believe it or not.
Yeah. When's the last time you've been to Oklahoma?
Like last weekend when I played poker there.
Do you bring your
It's
baby?
only an hour from the border, bud. Yeah, I strap her to my chest and I play poker for 9 hours.
Yeah, then people feel bad for you if you lose.
Yeah, and then she drinks Mountain Dew out of a straw that I put in the cup holder. There are 2 places I'm never going to bring my baby until she's older. Vegas and I guess casinos, but that's the same thing.
Yeah. Good.
Like I missed my child and I was walking in a shopping center with Britt like before when we were in Vegas a few weeks ago. And I said, I miss the baby. We should have brought her. And then some guy like walked by and took a huge puff out of his cigarette and blew it in our face. And she goes, yeah, I don't think she's going to be coming here for a while. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right.
Good
but
call.
yeah. Okay. So that was a good show. Is that all we have to say?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for listening to the latest edition of Stars Matter. Stay tuned as our team becomes robust, more robust.
Yes, I'll jump in.
Out.
I'll jump in. We're gonna Stars Matter is by no stretch going anywhere, but we are going to be adding to our Stars Matter team. We're going to be welcoming Manny Navarro and Grace Rayner in for podcasts on a much more frequent basis, joining me and Ari. And Manny's going to have some of his own YouTube content. We're still kind of over the next few months going to feel our way through this, but to give you guys even more recruiting content.
The Stars Matter brand is expanding. It's conference podcast expansion. We're going to have a much bigger YouTube presence, and we're going to do more with the talent that we have. So I'm excited about it. Mitch is excited about it, and we will certainly be cluing you all in more on that as we continue forward. Thank you so much for listening to this week's edition of Stars Matter. That was Mitch Light. I'm Ari Wasserman.